All right, gang. I am very excited to be able to talk to a cinematographer that has two really cool projects that are going to be able to be seen by you guys sooner than later. Coming off of the last thing that Mary saw and Black Friday, cinematographer David Kruta. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
No problem. No problem. First, if we can, let's talk about Black Friday because
Sure.
the premise of this thing, my wife is a Black Friday shopper. Like
I'm sorry.
you have to understand, dog. Like it is so much so that the yearly tradition now is well before COVID was that we would do Thanksgiving dinner on Wednesday afternoon just so they could prep all their shit. Then I would go to Thanksgiving on with my parents on Thanksgiving, and she joins us, which was always part of the deal anyway, for leftovers with my parents' side on Black Friday. So I know firsthand how amped up people get for this shit. And the fact that you have a cast to work with, like Bruce Campbell in this thing, like this thing had to have been a ridiculously good time.
Oh yeah, no, it was a total blast. I personally have never done any Black Friday shopping. Like it just seems crazy to me to stuff yourself with turkey and whatever else, and then wake up at 2 in the morning or whatever to go buy stuff. But there's a lot of people out there doing it, and I think what the goal of this film was to just show how like ravenous these people can be.
Mm-hmm.
And the film shows that not only are they like that metaphorically, but they start turning into these creatures and they become that, for real. So our cast has to work their way out of the store, while fighting off these literal and figurative vultures that are trying to get them the whole time. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
So are we talking with that? Are we talking like full, like over the top Evil Dead style? Like these people are just turning into monsters, or are we talking a little bit more like supernatural? What are we dealing with as the things progress?
So so yes, they do actually turn into monsters, and there are
Okay.
progressions of makeup that happen. And Bob Kurtzman was our makeup guy who just absolutely killed it. He went everywhere from just like the discoloration and the boils and whatever to like teeth and rubber suits. And we have this one character who I probably shouldn't say too much about the
Right.
character,
Sure.
but the character changes from basically a Karen, right? Like, complaining about the state of the store,
Right.
to a horrific monster version of a Karen that you just don't want to deal with. And once you see it, I mean, like Bob absolutely crushed the rubber suit and then the makeup and everything for it. And the best part is this character wears this necklace, so you see it on the character before they change, and then
Mhm.
it's the one thing left after they do change.
Oh, so so it's the
So it's
identifying
that
mark.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Right on. Is her name Karen in the film?
it's not Karen, I promise
Wow.
you
Okay.
that. But it is a Karen.
That's always fascinated me, man. Like how that stuff starts. Like who the poor Karens, like the nice Karens, like how that's always deemed like the Karen. Don't be a Karen and all that stuff. But once you say that, like everybody instantly knows now. Uh,
Right,
I'm sure, like in like casting calls and stuff, we're looking for a Karen.
right.
Um,
Exactly. The one bad apple, right?
yeah, for sure. The film with Bruce and everybody else trying to fight out of that store. It's almost like a modern day take on Dawn of the Dead in the shopping mall.
Right,
Uh,
right. Just more ridiculous. More ridiculous, more funny. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but gets there.
when you guys, or when you got approached to shoot this film, was there certain, style that instantly like came to your mind as a cinematographer that you were like, yes, I want to do this. I want to shoot it a certain way too. Like, what was like instantly going through your mind as you're, kind of preparing to film this thing in pre-production?
So when I read the script, I always kind of saw it as like a big budget, action film, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like even though it has action pieces, but it's still more of a traditional kind of horror escape film.
Mm-hmm.
But I always pictured big budget action film, and Casey, the director, he sent me some references, but above all else, he was like Super 8. Like we want that kind of wonder of discovering things with the characters. There's a couple characters that are really into like their jobs, for example, and want to achieve. And ironically, the character that most of an overachiever is Ryan Lee, who was in Super 8. So there was that kind of little bit of crossover. We actually ended up using the same lenses that they used on Super 8 through
Oh wow.
Panavision.
Yeah, yeah.
And the goal was to make it a fun monster movie, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it has its moments, it has its jump scares, it has its dark moments, the moments where you're worrying about a character that might have been infected or may have passed away or
Mm-hmm.
something to that effect. But overall, it's a fun journey, you know, especially for horror fans, right? Like people that are into like the old school like creature horrors.
Sure.
I personally am a fan of The Thing, right? Like
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
huge for me.
Yeah.
Obviously Evil Dead and all those. So being able to do a film that wasn't just green screens and VFX and comps and tracking markers, like it was really awesome.
Yeah, horror I think lends itself more so than any other, except for stuff like Star Wars or like true like Space Odyssey stuff, to practical
Sure.
effects. Like the Evil Dead, if all that was digitized, it loses the personality of the Deadite like instantaneously. Where the practical effects, even when they redid or they brought it back and did Ash versus the Evil Dead, they still made sure to do practical effects on all those guys, just because it's like a whole nother level of personality to the whole thing.
Totally. Yeah, you can interact with these characters in real time, in real life. Having someone in like full creature makeup come around a corner and grab your hero, and
Mhm.
see their reactions, and the light reacts a certain way and the camera operator can react to their motions. I mean,
Mhm.
it's so much better than having to pretend that things are happening and then hope it works out later.
Yeah, so film school, one of the things they always make us do, obviously, is location scouting. They made us like go out and talk to someone who is almost like you go approach someone that it's going to be like an uncomfortable level of asking for permission. So I had to like go talk to this hotel manager and all this stuff. So any like fun stories about shooting this thing in the department store? Or did you guys like build a department store, or did you shoot in an actual store?
We actually shot in a defunct Toys R Us.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, we had the whole place to ourselves. Unfortunately, it had been emptied out. So, our art team and our production design team did a great job kind of refilling it with toys and making sure that the backgrounds really felt like we were in a toy store. But, I think they were able to take it further than what a normal toy store would look like a modern, filled, up to date one, but make it like a shitty one. Like the whole idea behind how we lit it, the stuff that was behind the characters and what they were interacting with, what's in the shelves. It was like, this is just a shitty toy store that sucks to work at. And Bruce Campbell, the manager, his character Jonathan,
Hmm.
is sitting there like lording over this. He's so he's like so proud of it, and it's his baby, and he's like the corporate overlord of this just shitty toy store, and it's just absolutely perfect.
The I gotta say, I mean, we're in a state. It almost seems like these kind of movies are making revive. The way that you're describing this is almost like Willy's Wonderland, like
Oh,
with
sure.
with the shitty pizzeria animatronic characters type of a thing. So the fact that you have a Campbell doing, I can only pre-assume what he does best as this toy store manager, and him thinking that it's Shangri-La and everyone else thinking that it's a like third-rate Walmart or something. That sounds too perfect.
Yeah.
You guys, filming this thing, when did you guys shoot it?
We actually shot last November and December. So November, December 2020.
So what was, sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say,
no worries, please.
That in the interviews and stuff, talking to guys making films over the stage of what is the current state of things, that November, December, that's like the second wave of the pandemic. So what kind of like complications did you guys as a team, really have to overcome to get this thing in the can?
Well, so this is my first like major project since the pandemic had started, and there were strict protocols. It's all the return to work protocols, and at that time, none of us were vaccinated. It wasn't available.
Right.
So, we did regular testing. We had a team that we would check in with at the beginning of the day, and every single person was tested at least 3 times a week, if not more. We had to wear KN95s at all times. We had to wear face shields when we were near actors that had the creature makeup on. They had to wear, these portable shields that they would carry around. And as soon as they took the makeup off, it was mask back on. Just a ton of protocols. And, I'm very happy to say that no one tested positive for COVID during our entire production. So
That's awesome.
We managed to make it happen. The tough part is trying to interact with your crew when they have these masks on. I remember my second AC at one point, I had only seen him in a mask for probably the first two to 3 weeks of production. And I caught him at one of these little areas that we had off to the side where you can have a drink of water or a snack or something. And I caught him without the mask. And I thought it was just some random guy that had come in for the day as a day player or an extra or something. And he's like, "Hey, Dave." I'm like, "Who are you?" I couldn't tell who he was because I had a whole different image of his face. But
that's funny. Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine how that goes. I work with high school kids for the day job, and that, whenever we get teachers or new students or whatever in the last year and a half, total, same thing. Like once you see them without a mask on, it truly is kind of a mind trip as to how the whole mask thing has kind of warped our sense of imagination, I guess would be the best way to put it, as far as how does this dude look without the mask on, or oh damn, I never realized you had a beard, or whatever.
Right. Right. The craziest ones are always like when someone you don't expect to have like any sort of crazy facial hair, they pull the mask off and they have like a like a Civil War era mustache or something like that underneath.
Yeah. Now this one is gonna be available soonish, isn't it?
As far as I know, it's coming out around. I think it's coming out a couple days before Thanksgiving, and I'm not 100% sure, but I do think there's a theatrical run of some sort, and there's video on demand as well. So there should be a streaming option. So I'm very excited to show my whole family on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that lines up like perfectly.
Yeah, I would hope for nothing more than a Black Friday release for Black Friday.
So with Bruce and company on that cast, there has to be some like fun stories or in between take stories or anything that we can only imagine that he would deliver. We had the cast of Ash versus Evil Dead minus Bruce at a con that we work with, and they were all just telling stories about how the dude is he's like the nicest guy, but B, he's like pretty off the charts when it comes to stuff. So was there some fun shenanigans going on in that toy store?
Honestly, I wouldn't call it shenanigans. You know, Bruce was one of the most professional actors that I've ever worked with. You know, he was always ready to go. He would sit in his makeup chair and wait to be called, and
Wow.
he'd show up and he would be the first person on set. It's like, okay, we're shooting, and Bruce was there, and he would look around and be like, where the fuck is everybody else? You know, like, you know, he gave everybody else, like jokingly, a hard time
Yeah.
to like be more professional, be there, be ready. But you know, always keeping the vibe really lovely, just making sure that everybody felt comfortable, knowing that we had a few less experienced actors that maybe were a little intimidated by his stature, I guess.
Right.
And he encouraged them and got, you know, helped get great performances out of them, and was just generally super, super lovely to work with. At some point, I will share a video of his thank you speech once he was done with his part.
Mm.
And you know, I honestly, I would absolutely love to work with him again. He was fantastic.
Do you have a favorite, Toy Story monster creature that you enjoyed shooting as cinematographer that like fans should like be on the lookout for when they're watching it? Is it the Karen character, or is there a
It
different one that
it's the
Karen
Karen character. Yeah.
character? Okay.
Just like not some of the other characters, they're great. There's one Bob Kurtzman's son Louis plays one of the toy store employees who ends up getting infected, and he starts turning, and we have, you know, I think 4 or 5 different stages of creature makeup for him,
Hmm. Hmm.
because he's a little infected, and then he's very infected, and then there's the first fight with him, and we think he's gone, and then he comes back, and then he gets the absolute shit beat out of him by this was great. Ivana Baquero plays sort of like the love interest, like the nice girl, and she at a certain point has just kind of had it with all the misogyny and the bullshit, and just takes all of her rage out on on this one monster character, and it's actually pretty brutal. But you know, for monster makeup, there's another couple of stages there that just get really gory. So that part was fun. But the Karen character is, to me, that's the best one.
And switching gears pretty dramatically, we make our way to the last thing that Mary saw, and a few years back, The Witch came out, and it
Sure.
kind of reiterated horror movies that take place in this time period. And I know Last Thing Mary Saw kind of takes place um, couple hundred years after what The Witch would have taken place at. So things are a little bit more advanced civilization wise,
Sure.
but it still definitely has that very like creepy tonality to it. Like the set designs and stuff, just by watching the trailer and a couple clips that have gotten released since Fantasia, the movie looks just really, really scary. Like the perfect almost haunted house, like Halloween time, like that vibe kind of a thing. So what was this film like to shoot?
Wildly different,
Yeah,
I
I
would say.
can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah. It was a classic kind of indie film production, indie horror. You know, it it definitely had its limitations resource wise, but I think that is part of creating the look. You know,
Sure.
we definitely wanted to go with, you know, a very oppressive kind of feel. So everything was supposed to feel like the world was closing in on these characters. You know, like
Mhm.
they couldn't run from the house because it was surrounded by woods, and at night it was just black. You know, it always felt overcast. It felt like, you know, the sky was about to open up on everybody. And couple that with the performances and the overtones of like the religious oppression that this
Mhm.
family has. Like, no, none of the characters feel like they are able to do anything. So you have these little moments between our main characters, played by Isabel Furman and Stephanie Scott, who have these moments of tenderness and are able to kind of get away from everybody.
Mhm.
And you know, they're always on the cusp of being found out, right? And so that to me is kind of like the biggest tension that happens in the film. If that makes sense.
No, for sure. And where did you guys film this at?
We shot this at a farmhouse, an old historical farmhouse out on Long Island.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in California, and there's nothing that looks like, just by at the judging by it, there's nothing that like not manufactured like tomorrow that looks like the house that they are in. Like this is very like old school America, like, you know, almost dare I say, like I said, the witch, but like that colonial, like we're just figuring stuff out kind of a vibe to it. And like you said, that you know, out, you know, any further past the property, it's just dark, like where are you gonna go type of a vibe to it. How like far away was this house in actuality from like a hotel, or, you know, like where the crew was staying?
It was in an active town. I mean, we had, Long Island Sound right there. We actually had to paint out a few, lights in the distance
Wow. Okay.
after the fact. And, the drive to the hotel was maybe 15 minutes. So it wasn't
Wow.
super remote.
So
But,
yeah.
the house itself, I think, was probably built in the early 1800s, if not the late 1700s. It was a pretty contemporary farmhouse for the time.
Hmm.
You look at the history of California, for example, like California was basically still wilderness in early 1800.
Yeah, for sure.
So big difference there.
For people who this may be the first time they're hearing about this film, not up on the indie horror scene, give them a quick synopsis line of the last thing that Mary saw.
How would I describe it? So Last Thing Mary Saw is set in 1843 in New York. It's set in a farmhouse where we have a family that's full of very religious people, and the daughter of the family is having a relationship with the maid, which is very taboo at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the matriarch of the family dies under very mysterious circumstances, and the constable of the town is working on figuring out who caused the death of the matriarch, and it's fairly gruesome. So there's a little bit of a supernatural element to it, but there's also the kind of classic, religious oppression kind of thing to it.
It's interesting how that aspect of horror seems like it's making a comeback right now too. Um, Mike Flanagan just came out with his Black Mass show on Netflix. Um, that deals a lot with that kind of a mentality and the vibe of that kind of a setting as well. And it's scary to think almost that the villains that exist in that time period to this day actually kind of still exist. They may not be outed as much and may not be into the forefront as much, but that is something that, depending on a person's experience with any kind of organized religion, they could look at that film, your guys' film, and I would put money on the table that they're going to be like, shit, man, this is something that I just kind of saw, completely modernized version of, but this is how I saw this guy treat so and so like 2 weeks ago. So I mean, you ain't lying when you say the tonality of the two films is completely different. But with you getting to be behind the camera and do that, like, do the vibe of the projects like start to wear off on you, like mentally? Like if you're doing a movie versus like Mary, like, are you like, man, like this is really heavy? Like it's fun because it's like, making movies is like the best thing ever, but that subject matter is a heavy subject matter at the end of the day. Scary movie, but then the subtext, once you really start watching it, sounds like it's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, sure, they're probably a few scenes here and there that took a minute where, you know, you call cut and you're finally done with the scene and everybody's still quiet and you kind of work your way back into, you know, the normal world. But honestly, I like the most oppressed I've ever kind of felt on a film set, the most like heavy that I felt is when I work in an office building. Um, and less so with horror because it's a little bit more imaginary, you know?
Right. You, David, what was it for you? Everyone has like a film or a TV series um, that really like brought in the love of horror when they were younger.
Sure.
You know, you mentioned The Thing earlier. When you threw that out and the practical effects of The Thing, like my mind instantly was like, The Thing reminds me of The Fly, like that practical effects monsters type of a thing. Which then, I mean, you can go down the line. So, what was it for you that really got you into the genre as just a fan?
I think my biggest ones would be the Alien series.
Okay, yeah,
I've been a huge fan of sci-fi. I was just speaking with someone the other day saying that I wish there was more sci-fi horror because I
yeah,
think that is a really great kind of subgenre that I very much enjoy, and the world building that you get out of Alien is just
mm,
spectacular. You know, I don't know if there's you know, I grew up and like I'm an Eastern European, right? So maybe there's a little bit of the kind of Soviet, you know, the Soviet construction and like overbearing kind of practicality of their industry that
sure,
might have some kind of effect on me because like the alien worlds are, you know, these giant ships that are very practical. Like everybody goes in and they build like these, you know, factories and whatever on these different planets. And maybe you could say that the creature itself is some kind of metaphor for, you know, the seeping whatever, like a seeping mentality, or you're being assimilated into something or overrun by something. But
right.
um, it's just a world that I really enjoy as far as movies are concerned.
Is there a film that wasn't horror that you saw that was like, man, I want to do that. I want to make something like that.
I'd say two films. Legend,
Okay.
which are you familiar with Legend?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the director's cut, not the
Yeah.
sorry, the theatrical cut, not the director's cut.
Okay.
The theatrical cut with the Tangerine Dream soundtrack is one of my favorite films of all time. It has such great use of atmosphere and texture, and it feels very tangible in a fantastical sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm obsessed with atmosphere. You know, every project that I come on, I'm always like, all right, who's like doing the particles floating in the air? Who's running the haze? You know,
Right.
first department I go to is special effects and talk to them about like how are we doing this. I'd say the other one is The Fifth Element,
Oh,
which, you know, my dad's he's a big action movie fan, big sci-fi fan, and he and I went to see it in theaters like 3 times when it came out. So it was just a lot of great memories there. At this point, I've probably seen it, you know, 20, 30, 40 times.
that movie. I mean, you talk about world building. That movie in itself, like, I was honestly surprised. It's kind of corny to call it the sixth or seventh or eighth element, but I'm surprised that we didn't get like like a full franchise out of that film because they really only scratched that surface of what could have been as far as different characters and different areas that they go to. They get Amelia back and have her and all those guys, Bruce and all of them, come back and revise it, man. If we can get Blade Runner to come back with Ryan Gosling so far after the fact, we could definitely get Fifth Element back in the theater. Um,
Totally.
people would, people I think would flock to it too. That film has held up, um, just like Alien, and just like you know uh, a whole lot of other ones that a lot of people still very much love that film. So those are two solid choices to hang your hat on to decide that you want to do cinematography, man. That your journey into getting into it, like, what was that like for you? Did you do the film school route? Did you like just kind of find some gigs and work your way up? How did you, get your way into where you are?
No, I didn't do film school. I had like a fascination with cameras, but I originally thought I'd want to be a writer and director. So
Okay.
I took a writing course. It was a little nonprofit in Boston that was teaching screenwriting. So I went in there and started learning screenwriting, and I was a terrible screenwriter. Like, I could just not finish a script, and it just wasn't the thing that really kind of grabbed me.
Hmm.
But our teacher invited a few of the students to participate in a 48-hour film project.
Hmm.
And I saw that he was completely overwhelmed with the amount of roles he was taking on. So I suggested, hey, like, I know how to run a camera. Would you like me to shoot? Take that off your plate for you. And I fell in love with it. So right then and there, I was just like, that this is my calling. Like, I'm gonna pursue camera and lighting and telling stories in that way. And I think having grown up in a family of artists, my dad's a painter, and I grew up painting and drawing. It just kind of made sense to have a medium that was, for me, it has a lot more elements to it, but it still is, it's painting with light. It's still storytelling.
Sure. Yeah. No. There's most definitely there's a reason. I think you mentioned getting the reference shots and everything. I mean, there's a reason I think that is part of the process, because that is part of the medium where they're handing you uh, the paint and the brush, so to speak, and now you're taking that camera and you're painting the picture. Um, Now, with the last thing that Mary saw, I know we talked about how it's getting good press out of the film fest, but do you have any idea when that is going to become available for everybody to check out?
As far as I know, it's supposed to be early 2022 on Shutter.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Shutter always does like the good horror shit, man. Like, they find a way, even like shows like NS042 that is on like regular TV, them signing the rights to stream that. Like, they are very much like that, both mainstream, indie, and international horror source for the fans. Like, they have exposed, I know myself personally and our team and everybody I talk to like movies that you may not even know existed. So their library is awesome to be able to look at different technique and be able to see different ways to scare people and be scared by those films. So that's rad that it's going on Shutter. That is the flag bearer of the horror genre in 2021.
Totally. I'm very excited.
What about what are you digging right now? Are you like watching anything? Are you uh, excited to see anything that's coming out? Is there anything that's kind of like, man, like this was awesome, or a show that was like, I freaking love this? Is there anything doing it for you right now?
Yeah, actually, so two films that I really enjoyed were Censor and Swallow, and then of course, as any sci-fi fan, I'm super pumped for Dune. So I'm excited
Yeah.
to see that as well. Obviously, I haven't been back to the theaters yet, so I'm waiting for some good films to go check out. With things kind of reopening again.
How is that process going on the East Coast with movie theaters and such? Are they opening? Are they staying kind of closed? What's that scene like right now?
As far as I know, I think they're doing, like buffer seats.
Okay.
And if you're, in New York City, what instills a lot of confidence is that everybody everywhere is checking for vaccination status.
Okay.
So you have to be fully vaccinated to go into bars, into theaters, into gyms, like that sort of thing. So it
Right on.
makes me feel a little better about it. But I am waiting for the right opportunity to
Sure.
actually go see a film.
It's
I don't.
probably gonna be Dune. That movie has to
It
be
probably will
something
be Dune.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Greg Fraser's work. I mean, I think he's such an incredible cinematographer, and I can't wait to see what he does on this.
That movie, just the trailer in itself is like a movie. Like just
Totally.
uh, the way that is the complete package. I thought when that thing came on, um, from the score to everything, the voiceover work. Yeah, that movie will be something I think pretty special.
Yeah, and I am a fan of the original. I know David Lynch isn't, but I'm not a huge David Lynch fan. It's like the one David Lynch movie that I actually really love. And I love the art direction in it. I think that's kind of my favorite part of it. You know, like the huge ships with the openings on the side, but they're almost like old picture frames, you know, from like Renaissance paintings.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's always interesting when something like that, to hear you say that he wasn't the hugest fan. It reminds me of like Stephen King not liking Kubrick's Shining.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like, what is your problem, man? Like, he did a hell of a job with it. Jack Nicholson is like outstanding. Like, come on, Steve, come on, man. Like, just
Yeah.
um,
Sometimes just something doesn't click, you know?
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
If you were gonna shoot anything outside of horror or sci-fi, is there something like another genre? There's people that come on our show that'll be like, I only want to do horror, and that's fine.
Sure.
And then there's some people that will say, man, I'll do, if the script is there, I'll make whatever, kind of jumps off the page and is like, damn, this sounds like it would be fucking awesome to make this movie. What camp are you in? Are you very genre specific, or are you just like, if it's good, I'm for it?
Um, I think genre in general is somewhere that I lean because I feel like you can get a little bit more creative with the image. You know,
Yeah.
I don't look at film as, and I have shot documentaries and I've shot dramas, but I don't look at film as a medium of realism. You know, I want it to be something that you can express yourself with, and uh, you know, I find projects that allow for greater freedom in the image making and for, you know, being able to take that kind of leap of disbelief or suspension of disbelief
Mm-hmm.
and being able to craft those images. But I did actually just shoot an action film down in Georgia recently with Mel
Oh, right
Gibson and
on.
Jason Isaacs, and I'm very excited about it. I had a theory that I'd be into shooting action, and it turns out I was right. And I absolutely had so much fun shooting that. A lot of explosions and gunfire and whatnot. I think if I were to choose a film that kind of represents what I would like to do, maybe not next in my career, might be a little too big for me at the moment, but you
Yeah,
know, call it the next 5 to 10 years.
sure.
Something like Edge of Tomorrow, you know,
Ooh, okay.
which I think just nails the action, nails the story, nails the fun, and nails the style. It's like it's just such a cool film, and I'd love to be able to do something like that.
That's a really cool teetering the line of horror and sci-fi too. Like
Totally.
it, and that I, lay at put in the hands of the cast to really deliver that horror aspect, because their performances in that movie, like they really stood out. Like that's the lasting impact when you have a film that is like that. I mean, Amazon just dropped that the Chris Pratt movie over the summer,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and it just didn't ring home true like Edge of Tomorrow did. And it's like just the level of the intensity of that film is very very horrific, and then the action is very Starship Troopers almost. So that, yeah, that kind of a thing, to be able to be on set and doing that would be awesome.
Totally.
Hopefully we get you back on the show and you're talking about doing something like it here.
That'd be great.
Where can everybody kind of like keep tabs on you as you are putting forth all these projects, especially in the next coming months when they're all going to start being released here?
Sure. So I keep my website updated, davidkruta.com, but my big outlet is on Instagram. So at @dkruta on Instagram. And, I'll do the stories and the posts as things come out.
Awesome, man. David, I look forward to spending my Thanksgiving as my wife battles watching Black Friday, and then we will definitely be looking for the last thing that Mary saw the first of the year, and we will have to see if we can figure something out after they come out to get you back on, so we can like talk about them in a more spoilery tone, and be able to talk about like certain scenes and stuff that you shot and how you did that. But
Totally.
I thank you for taking the time to do the interview with us, and everybody definitely go check out David's site, dkruta.com. Stay up to the know on when these films are going to be released and available for us in the States. And most importantly, like, just support filmmaking as a whole. Don't try to torrent it or do anything stupid like that. Like, download or subscribe to Shudder, or just even do the free trial. Watch it the way it was supposed to be watched. And definitely, I know I'm probably going to end up just buying Black Friday. Anything with Bruce Campbell's already like, let me get my wallet out. But thank you, buddy. We appreciate you taking the time out and talking with us today.
Oh, of course. It's my pleasure, and I hope you enjoy the movie.
Definitely. Cool, man.